Hello, welcome to the Salina Journal's new video series that we hope to produce about once every couple of weeks, where members of the Salina Journal Sports Department will get together and talk about topics of interest at the high school and small college level, and perhaps maybe Salina Liberty and whatever happens to be going on at that time. For this first one, I'm joined by Larry Moritz, the legendary Larry Moritz, high school writer extraordinaire. And our special guest today is Sam Sellers, head football coach at Salina South. I'm Bob Davidson, the sports editor of the Salina Journal. And for this first one, with National Signing Day for football tomorrow, we thought it might be good to bring Sam in and talk about high school recruiting, specifically as it relates to the junior colleges. The hot topic in the state here in the last few days has been the junior colleges recruiting of Kansas high schools, or more specifically, the lack thereof. There's a big article last weekend, written by Taylor Eldridge of the Wichita Eagle that addressed this, and we ran that story in Sunday's Salina Journal in page C3. And it's what a lot of people are talking about. The junior colleges recently passed a new bylaw where schools will be allowed to offer as many out-of-state scholarships as they want to. They used to be restricted, which meant that they would focus on signing a lot more Kansas football players. But now with those laws gone, they're turning their focus on recruiting kids from outside of the state of Kansas. And it's having a profound impact on state high schools. Today there was a report out on Twitter that said that a year ago there were 130 high school Kansas football players committed to junior colleges. This year, in comparison, there are only 28. And we brought Sam in to talk about that, and Sam has some opinions about this that might border on strong. So I'll just flip to you, Sam, and let you take off.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that has radically changed recruiting in Kansas, and it's one of those things that for the Jayhawk coaches, I totally understand. I think if I was a Jayhawk head coach, I would probably want to not be restricted to only one type of kid that I can sign in a class, or a percentage of kids that I can sign in a class. And the tough part is that us as high school coaches are really concerned about is it's really hurting our kids. You talk about the number of commitments, but since that rule was passed in October, I've had 0 junior college coaches on our campus. And to give you an idea, every year that I've been the head coach, I would say 6 out of the 8 schools in the months of December and January had at least one visit to our campus per week during that time. And then the other 2 schools, it might be once every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks. And so just the foot traffic and a small selfish piece of me doesn't miss that part of seeing 2+ coaches a day and lining kids up for them to talk to and things like that. But it's had a profound effect on our kids, and it's not only just the immediate, lack of, scholarships that these kids can have, but then there's a trickle-down effect to, Division II schools, the NAIA schools, and, it's one of those things that as high school coaches, we question, these are called community colleges, and, again, understanding from just looking at a football's perspective, I understand what the head coaches are wanting out of this. It's best for them and their careers. But I have a hard time with even the colleges themselves. Are they opening up Pandora's box here? And my biggest question is, are we servicing Kansas kids the right way? Because we're going to have kids now that won't have any college options at all. In the past, the 2 things that a JUCO could give a kid is, number one, that ability to jump to a higher level. Maybe he develops, in a year or two, or was a little bit overlooked in high school, and goes and proves that he can play at the junior college level, gets more exposure, and gets to that higher level, or it allows a really, quite frankly, the cheapest education, with books and tuition paid for, that you can get in Kansas. And what's really going to hurt is our non-qualifier kids, and the non-qualifier kids that you can't go to a four-year school, whether it's NCAA guidelines or NAIA guidelines, those kids can't go. And obviously the argument is, get your dang grades in high school, and that's not an issue. And I absolutely agree with that. The fact of the matter is every year I have a kid or two that's a non-qualifier, and whether they messed around their freshman or sophomore year, or maybe their entire high school career academically. That's probably my biggest issue with this rule, is that we're now, most kids that are going to be non-qualifiers are going to fall under and maybe some poverty measures. And we talk about breaking the circle of poverty. I've had kids that have not been non-qualifiers that are not only going and getting a two-year education, but they're using football as a vehicle now to get a college education and a four-year school and bachelor's degrees. And if they don't have football as an option, the odds of them going and getting even an associate's degree is a huge long shot. And that's probably the toughest thing to swallow right now. And I've got some kids that's affecting already. And that's, it's going to affect our communities, because, we're, in the past we could have some kids break out of that circle, and now that's going to be even tougher to do.
And in the past, there have been traditionally a lot of Kansas kids from Salina South and Salina Central who have gone to the junior colleges and have had successful careers down there.
Oh, absolutely. And I think in this argument that has gone on across the state, that there's probably too much emphasis placed on the actual football piece of it, and coming out of high school, I didn't have any offers, and now I've got several Division I offers, and I think and that's great and all, don't get me wrong, but my concern is the education piece of this, and realistically speaking, it's just not, it's something that's not going to happen for a lot more kids now.
Does the non-qualifiers, are they, I know we're going to talk about the aspects of NCAA or NAI and what it might mean. Can they get into the NAI schools?
Yeah, well, as you go down in levels, Division I is going to be your strictest standards of. You have some partial qualifiers in Division II and NAI stuff, but most of those kids are going to be on the outside looking in. I mean, most of my kids are going to have low test scores, low GPA. Those kids that are going to fall, if they're going to be a non-qualifier, they're probably not going to get in as a partial.
Was it sometimes a motivational thing for their last semester too? I mean, if they had an opportunity to go to JUCO, that they actually finish school and.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think, I look back, and I hate to name some specific kids, but Darius Peterson is a kid that was an unmotivated kid in high school, and I can say that because he knows that I love him, and he's my son. But he's a kid that goes to Hutch and doesn't have. Had some, from a football standpoint, had some looks from the higher level schools, but he was a non-qualifier. A lot of times in high school, a kid will mess around academically his freshman and sophomore year, then all of a sudden kind of see, football or basketball, this might be a thing for me. And so they really focus on their schoolwork and try to get that GPA up, but it sometimes they've just done too much damage to it as a freshman and sophomore, and it's not until they kind of see that tangible carrot out there to get me through and get those grades. But Darius is a kid that went to Hutch, and again, it was not. I mean, he'll tell you right now they didn't like school, but football and the structure of football, and all those schools have tutors and your coaches are doing class checks and making sure you're going to class. And Darius just graduated from the University of Idaho last December, and maybe one of the proudest days of my life. And he's got a 4-year degree and is going to do something with it.
Doesn't this ring a little bit hollow? The coach who started this movement and ultimately got the rule of change was Jeff Sims, head coach at Garden City Community College, and he was the one who's complaining the loudest. But then under this current system, he won a national championship, the National Junior College Championship this year, having these limitations. So doesn't that his argument ring a little bit hollow right now?
Well, Coach Sims says a lot of things that are awfully inflammatory, and the thing that I struggle with is it's all about him and what's in his best interest, and I agree that this is in his best interest. I'm not going to argue that at all, and it's tough for us high school coaches to hear. The toughest thing is when we hear a Jayhawk coach tell us that this is what's best for Kansas kids, and because it is absolutely not, and it's the biggest farce. They're either drunk off ambition of these new rules, or not very good people. To be honest with you.
Right. So let's talk about the suggestion that this could be a windfall for the NAI schools and an opportunity for them to get more of these kids at that level.
Well, and I think there is some credence to that, and obviously the NAI is a fantastic level of football to go and play it, or in any sport, and obviously the drawback to NAI is the fact that these are all private schools, and the cost of an education there is high, and the scholarship money you do get is nice, but it's still you're going to pay more getting a big football scholarship in an NAI school than you are just going and being a student at Fort Hays State. And so obviously what some kids have used that junior college path as is to get 2 years of school paid for and then go and play NAIA ball, and that way when they get done with school that their student debt's a little bit lower than it would have been. And I do think, I think the Division II level will benefit at those upper level of athletes, those kids that maybe sold the dream by junior colleges, and maybe some rightfully so, that you come to us and you have some D2 offers right now, but you're going to have D1 offers after 2 years, and I'm not going to disagree with it. That happens sometimes, but I think now, if a lot of junior college schools aren't recruiting those kids, now they might look a little bit more seriously at that D2 level and say, hey, this is something for me. And I think, another effect on that is I think now that's going to start bumping kids down, because looking at the Division II signing classes right now, you're seeing some awfully good Kansas kids that maybe 50% of those kids would have gone the junior college route. And now that I think there's some kids, and I think I have a kid this year that maybe would have gotten a Division II scholarship, but was just under that fringe cut, and they maybe got some higher level kids that they wouldn't have gotten in the past, and now he's on the outside looking at the Division II level. And I think NAIA-wise, it's going to force kids to take longer looks at that, and I think that can be good for the NAIA level.
But the cost continues to be the biggest drawback, because this would seem to be a bonanza for like a Kansas Wesleyan, but with those, like you said, the cost spread out over 4 years, it just almost in some cases makes it simply prohibitive.
Yeah, I mean, if that's when I talk to my seniors and juniors about that next level. Again, I think the KCAC conference is a great conference, and a lot of great coaches in that conference, and programs where you'd have a great experience and a great education, but it's that financial piece is something that you really have to look at. What do I want to do as an occupation, and is that going to make sense to take on a giant financial burden? Being a teacher that's getting paid $30,000 a year straight out, and that's the tough part of that level. I do think that kids will take longer looks at that level though, because of the rule.
You're essentially you're essentially paying them to play football there, because you could go cheaper to a 4-day state or even a K-State or a KU. But I want to play football, but I'm going to have to pay more.
Yeah, you're paying for the experience to play football. There's no doubt about it.
One school that seems to have perhaps hit on a gold mine here is Bethany, and they have this, or they're paying full tuition for 4 years for students from Salina and McPherson County. You've got an athlete, and I've heard of other athletes from those two counties who are going down there. It's basically the cost is of what they're paying for is about $110,000 per student. It's called the Good Life Scholarship, and the money comes from just foundation and donor money. And at least for Bethany, to get athletes from McPherson and Salina counties, it appears to be paying some huge dividends for them.
Yeah, you talk about, just from an athletic standpoint, perfect timing for Coach Hubbard and those guys with these JUCO rule changes is the one thing that Coach Hubbard told me was that they're not going to be able to just take every Salina County, McPherson County kid that wants to play football because it's not going to come out of his budget. But with the NAIA rules, it's that you can't give a kid a full scholarship over here and count him on your football team. That's going to count as a full scholarship for them as the NAIA sees it. So they're going to have to be a little bit more selective. But it's now just paying. I think it's about $9,000 a year for room and board that the Salina County, McPherson County resident will have to pay. Now you're talking about not having to play for football anymore. That's cheaper than going out to Hayes as a student and not playing any sports at all. And that's, we're going to have kids that are going to look long and hard into that.
Okay, that'll do it for this first episode. Thank you, Sam, for coming in. We appreciate you tuning in, and we see you the next time. Thank you.